So, what do we think about the statement today?
I mean, the Chancellor's going to be walking a pretty fine line here, I think. She's trying to trade off the fact that, on our estimate, she'll have no headroom without some fiscal consolidation. So we're expecting that. And the balancing act she's going to have to try and do is see whether she can push that into the future, which will mean that the near-term growth impacts will be a little bit smaller, and she won't have to have a kind of as much of a fight in the spending review come June. But the more she does that, the more that will strain credibility with the market.
In terms of the credibility of the market, there is a lot of concern about competency. There's a lot of concern about whether Rachel Reeves has created the problems herself. She says we're in a changing world. She's going to talk a lot about, obviously, tariffs coming potentially, about Trump, about the war. But actually, there's a lot of the concern around the UK economy self-inflicted. Bearing in mind, the OBR is going to cut aggressively today, we understand, on the growth estimates. And we haven't even had a tariff yet.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's definitely a story in the international dimension here. We've done work, our own analysis suggests that actually there's going to be about a 0.4% of GDP hit to growth this year coming from uncertainty around tariffs, which is the real killer for the UK, regardless of what the specifics of the tariffs are. So there's definitely an international dimension to this. But the changes to NICs that we saw in the October budget, we're already starting to see those play through in terms of lower nominal wage settlements for people, higher prices for people, and also firmed confidence. So we're starting to see talk of increased redundancies and worse employment outcomes.
Jack, if there was a devil in the detail, it's going to be in productivity. And it's extraordinary. And some of the city analysts, I'm sure Barclays have done the same thing, are pointing out that very small changes in productivity, and this is very important, very small changes in productivity can actually even blow out of the water Rachel Reeves' numbers aggressively. I saw one estimate that 0.1% lowering of our productivity could add 7 to 8 billion to her fiscal hole. Are those the kind of numbers you're knocking around?
Yeah, our estimates are pretty much the same. We're all looking at the same type of modelling exercises. So, I mean, that's pretty much in the right ballpark. And those kind of numbers dwarf anything that you would expect to see from small changes to kind of different spending parts of the budget. So really the OBR's forecast is going to be much more material in terms of the headroom the Chancellor has than anything we see in terms of small tweaks to policy.
Are we today going to have the start of the softening up process of higher taxation to come in the autumn?
I mean, where we go in the autumn, I think there's a lot to happen between now and then, including on that international dimension, so the tariffs opening up and things. But as it stands at the moment, the implied cuts that need to come in spending are very tough. And I think that will just keep that question on everyone's mind, is exactly how do you square this circle of low growth, high amounts of debt issuance and very stagnant productivity.
Does she need to change A, her fiscal rules, or B, the commitments not to increase national insurance, which is of course a moot point anyway, VAT or personal taxation?
I mean, I think changing the fiscal rules now, having already changed them once within this Parliament and having seen them change so regularly, that becomes more of a stretch.
That becomes problematic for the gilt market potentially.
Yeah, I think the gilt market has seen a lot of changes of fiscal rules, and then you start to wonder what the actual kind of benefit of a fiscal rule is if it can be so easily changed. So I think that one is quite a tough one to do, but the fact that something may need to change in the not too distant future to be able to square this fiscal circle is probably quite likely.